Hey everyone, it's Vando, and today we're pretty much just going to be having a discussion about the stuff that's been going on in the prep for Warlords of Draenor. Now, I haven't really done any Warlords content videos since the expansion was announced, and that's mainly because Blizzard has released a heck of a lot of information, and a lot of it is changes that players kind of expected anyway. First of all, it's important to remember that all the information that Blizzard has provided so far hasn't even made it to beta testing yet, so the majority of what you hear will probably be changed between now and release. For this reason, I'm going to be focusing on content and changes that will most likely see the least change to them, so I'll be focusing mostly on concepts and ideas rather than specific information about classes and all that sort of stuff. And the main reason for this is so people don't stumble across this video after beta or after release and be like, oh Vando, this is all wrong. Not that my mates Vay, Maccas and Uber Scoops won't do that anyway. So onto what this video is actually about. Recently added to the alpha patch notes for Warlords was an article to changes on spell snapshotting. Now, snapshotting is something that's been in the game for a long time. It has only really been noticed by the general casual player base very recently, and in fact in this expansion. So for anyone who doesn't know what snapshotting is, it's essentially refreshing your periodic damage and healing effects when your stats are at their highest, so when trinket procs, your cooldowns are used, etc. And a mechanic like this has both its positive and negative effects on raiding in general. Like, some of the positives of this mechanic are that it provides like an incredible DPS and healing numbers for players skilled enough to execute it, and it provides a level of gameplay for people to work towards. But one of the problems with this kind of powerful mechanic is that the skill cap required is so high that the damage difference between people who can snapshot perfectly and people that can only snapshot a little bit is hundreds of thousands of DPS, and this causes a problem for the casual player base who are effectively trying to progress on the same kills as the higher level raiders. Sure, you could argue that it is the reward of skill, but for the majority of players, all this has to be managed with a screen full of add-ons that effectively plays their class for them and takes their eye away from the general awesomeness that boss fights really should be visually. And let's face it, that's probably why they had to make Warlocks so hard to kill. So effectively what Blizzard has decided to do is to get rid of snapshotting pretty much altogether. Now there are a few exceptions to this, such as in the form of periodic effects that do a percentage of the previous ability. For example, with the mage's Fireball. Fireball applies a tick called Ignite, and it does a percentage of the fireball's damage over time. And another exception to this is abilities and buffs that are essential to the class mechanics, such as Nature's Swiftness for Boomkin Druids, and the additional damage buff they get from entering an eclipse. So the description given for how periodic effects will work in Warlords of Draenor is that periodic damage and healing effects now dynamically recalculate their damage, healing, critical strike chance, multipliers, and period on every tick. So how periodic effects have been dealt with in the past is that when you are at your most powerful with raid cooldowns, personal buffs, personal trinket procs, etc., you apply your DoT's or healing over time abilities, and they will incorporate that additional damage for the full duration of the dot or heal over time lifespan. Now how this is going to change is that if you use a damage or healing periodic effect such as a Warlock's Corruption or a Druid's Rejuvenation, and while the ability is active you get a trinket proc for 1000 intellect for example, the ability will automatically adjust to its damage or healing for the duration of that trinket proc, and not for the duration of the periodic effect. This effectively gets rid of dots and heal over time abilities that remain powerful beyond the duration of the proc, but it still allows for a skill factor to be used in terms of damage and heal over time abilities that apply an instant heal or an instant amount of damage. If you refresh it as soon as the trinket procs, you're going to get more ticks per trinket proc than you would if, say, you just left it on and waited for the ticks to come, as well as allowing time to cast your powerful hard-casted abilities within the buff timer. Personally, I feel that this is a necessary requirement for the game, as I find that it might be a bit demoralizing for the average casual player to have such a low damage output in comparison to people who are effectively playing the same class in the same gear, but just are at a higher skill level. I understand, obviously, that it is necessary to have a difference between skilled players and casual players and all that sort of thing, but to have a difference that can sometimes mean double the DPS of or heals per second as normal, it's a little bit overwhelming for the average player. So I'm joined here now by Dennett and Ultrolia, two people I've raided with before, and I just want to ask you guys, what is your opinion of snapshotting, and are you happy with the changes that Blizzard is wanting to implement in the next expansion? Dennett?
Yeah, well, playing a Frost Death Knight through this whole entire expansion, I found that, with Howling Blast being a core part of the rotation, constantly clipping your diseases has been a real kind of pain in the backside for it. And you do begin to notice a significant DPS loss when all the trinkets cooldowns are popped and you're overriding your diseases in like the second that they go down. You go from ticking, or you lose 20 to 30% on those dot ticks straight away. It's it really tends to hurt quite a bit. So having like live tracking on diseases will be a good thing overall, I think. I can see why there would be people out there that think otherwise, but no, I think it's a good thing overall.
So what essentially you're saying is that for the balance of classes in general, it should be that the snapshotting should be a fair sort of gameplay for everybody, rather than cancelling out classes that automatically refresh their dots and stuff with their general casted abilities.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like that was a big difference, especially in Throne of Thunder between, like I'm speaking from a Death Knight perspective, between Unholy and Frost, especially. Like Unholy, you deal a massive, like you'd use all of your burst cooldowns at the start and apply really, really strong diseases, and then you would use Festering Struck to keep them up for the entirety of the fight. And if you let them tick off, then basically your entire damage for the fight is kind of ruined. And that was a really, really painful thing, especially playing on Oceanic servers. Latency does come into it a fair bit. So yeah, overall, being able to live track this sort of stuff will hopefully smooth out DPS spikes between, especially between opposing classes, especially Affliction Warlocks compared to Destruction, I think.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And is that kind of why Frost DK has, well, not dismal DPS, but not quite up to the standard that a lot of other classes bring to the table?
I believe that comes more down to just the way that Death Knights in general scale with gear at the moment. I reckon that's all it is. Even Unholy Death Knights aren't exactly tracking that high in the DPS charts, and for the most part Frost is actually outscaling Unholy at this stage of the game, so I think ultimately, Death Knights are just not scaling so well with gear at this stage.
Well, let's hope that Blizzard takes favour to Death Knights in the next expansion.
Do let.
Yeah. What about you, Mr. Troll? What are your thoughts on snapshotting and the changes that are being made?
I think it's going to reduce a lot of the people min-maxing, like the difference in, people's DPS depending on their latency. And like, as a Warlock, I used to play in Throne of Thunder, and I could do a lot more damage than somebody who was lagging ever so slightly more, like a couple hundred MS, if that. And it more evens the playing field with everybody, rather than having people who far excel above others. And
it'll be really good to see the gap between the most elite players and the average player narrowed a little bit, because at the moment you can see, such as on the method kill videos for Siege of Orgrimmar tier, on fights like Heroic Thok, for example, you've got a Warlock as the top DPS who's pulling double the numbers that the next DPS is pulling, and that for me is a little bit overpowered in terms of mechanical play.
I mean, there'll still be people doing more just purely because they know their class better, or know what they're doing a bit better with terms of gear, but it won't nearly be as big a jumps as they have now.
Exactly. Well, thanks guys for your thoughts on this topic. And that's going to finish up the discussion on snapshotting for heal over time and general periodic effects. So let me know what your views are about this topic in the comments below. I really want to hear what people have to say about this snapshotting thing. Like, do you think it's unbalanced? Do you like it? Do you enjoy the skill cap value in it? Perhaps you've mastered it and now you feel a little bit, I guess, cheated by the fact that you've gotten so good at something and now it's being taken away. But yeah, just let me know in the comments below. A link to the alpha notes will be placed in the description below. If you like this video, please rate a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel if you want to see more, and follow me on Twitter. And as always, thanks so much for watching.